The afternoon air in the city square felt heavy with noise and movement. People walked in every direction, and voices mixed with music from nearby shops and laughter from children playing near the fountain. In the middle of the square, two police officers stood beside a large trained dog named Rex. Rex sat tall and calm with deep brown eyes that watched everything around him with quiet focus. The officers were there for a public safety event meant to show how trained dogs help protect people. The crowd enjoyed the show, and many held phones high to record every moment. Rex followed commands with perfect control, as if every movement was carved into his body through years of practice. He walked when told and stopped when ordered and sat again with patience that impressed everyone watching. Not far from the crowd stood a little girl named Mia. She was 7 years old and small for her age, and wore a blue sweater that looked old and slightly worn. A school bag hung from her shoulder, and she held it strapped tightly with one hand, as if letting go might cause something bad to happen. Her face looked calm, but her eyes carried worry far beyond her years. Mia had not planned to stop at the square. She was walking home alone after school, taking a longer path, because it felt safer to her. When she saw the crowd, she slowed down and stayed near the edge, not wanting attention. The police dog caught her eye immediately. Something about Rex made her feel noticed without being judged. As the officer spoke loudly to explain Rex's skills, Mia felt her heart beating faster. Her fingers trembled, and her breathing became shallow. She looked around and saw smiling faces and parents laughing with their children. To them this was entertainment, but to her this moment felt like the only chance she had. Rex noticed Mia before anyone else did. His ears shifted slightly, and his eyes locked onto her face. The playful energy he had shown moments earlier faded into sharp focus. He remained seated, but his body became alert, as if a silent alarm had been triggered inside him. Mia swallowed and stepped forward just a little. No one seemed to notice her movement. She raised her hand slowly, as if fixing her bag strap. Her fingers made a small motion that looked meaningless to anyone watching. It was quick and subtle and easy to miss. Rex froze completely. His tail stopped and his breathing changed. He stood up without any command and stared directly at Mia. The officer paused mid-sentence, confused by the sudden shift. He softly called Rex's name, expecting him to return to position. Rex did not respond. The crowd sensed something was wrong, and the noise slowly faded. Rex took one careful step toward Mia, and then another. His movement was calm but serious. Parents pulled their children closer, and whispers spread through the group. Mia felt fear rise in her chest, but she forced herself to stay still. Her eyes stayed forward, and her face remained blank, even though her hands shook. She knew she could not run, and she knew she could not speak yet. Rex reached her and sat directly in front of her, blocking her path. He gently pressed his nose against her knee, and stayed there. His eyes never left her face. The officer felt a chill run through him because he recognized that signal. Rex only acted this way when he sensed danger or distress. The officer stepped closer and lowered himself to Mia's level. His voice was gentle and slow. He asked if she was safe and if she needed help. The crowd watched in silence, unsure of what was unfolding. Mia nodded once, but tears filled her eyes. She bit her lip to stop herself from crying. Rex stayed perfectly still beside her like a silent shield. The officer understood then that this was no mistake and no performance. Something serious had just been revealed, and the little girl was at the center of it. The officer stayed kneeling in front of Mia while the crowd kept a careful distance, and the square felt strangely quiet compared to moments before. Rex remained close to the girl, pressing his body lightly against her leg, as if promising he would not move. The officer spoke softly again and asked her name, and Mia answered in a small voice that almost vanished into the open air. He asked if she had come alone, and she nodded slowly while holding her bag tighter. Rex lifted his head and looked toward the edge of the crowd, then back to Mia, as if checking the space around them. Another officer stepped closer and gently asked the crowd to give them room, and people obeyed, sensing the seriousness of the moment. The officer asked Mia if she was hurt, and she shook her head, but her hands trembled more clearly now. He asked if someone had scared her, and she hesitated before giving a very small nod. Rex let out a low sound again and turned his head sharply toward a nearby street. The officer noticed and followed Rex's gaze but saw nothing unusual at first glance. Mia took a slow breath and whispered that she could not talk loudly here. The officer leaned closer so only she could hear him and told her she was safe now. He promised that Rex would stay with her no matter what. Mia looked down at the dog and gently touched his fur for the first time. Rex relaxed slightly but did not move away. The officer asked Mia about the signal she had made with her hand, and her eyes widened in surprise. She asked how he knew about it, and the officer explained that Rex was trained to recognize distress signs taught in schools and safety programs. Mia nodded slowly and said her teacher had shown them a secret signal for emergencies. She said she practiced it many times but never thought she would need it. The officer listened carefully as Mia explained in short, quiet sentences. She said someone had been following her for several days on her way home. She said the person never spoke, but always stayed close enough to make her afraid. Today she noticed the same person again, and her chest felt tight with fear. When she saw the police dog, she remembered the signal and hoped someone would understand. Rex shifted his position and stood facing the street again. His ears lifted, and his posture became tense. The officer trusted Rex more than his own eyes in moments like this. He spoke into his radio calmly and described the situation without raising alarm. He asked for support to quietly check the nearby streets. Mia asked if she was in trouble, and the officer shook his head gently. He told her she had done exactly the right thing and that she was very brave. Tears finally rolled down her cheeks, but she did not cry loudly. Rex leaned closer and rested his head against her side, offering comfort without needing words. The crowd watched from a distance, confused and concerned. Some parents looked at their children with new awareness. The event that had begun as entertainment had turned into a lesson about listening and noticing. The second officer returned quietly and spoke to the first in a low voice. Rex reacted instantly and took 2 steps forward, pulling slightly on his lead. The officer followed Rex's movement and nodded once. He asked Mia if she could walk with him to a safer spot nearby, and she agreed without hesitation. They moved toward a police vehicle parked just beyond the square. Rex stayed between Mia and the open space, never letting anyone come too close. The officer opened the car door and offered Mia a seat inside. She hesitated only a moment before stepping in and sitting quietly. Rex sat outside the door, still watching the surroundings. The officer spoke gently again and asked Mia about her home and who she lived with. She said she lived with her grandmother who worked late and trusted Mia to walk home after school. She said she had not told anyone about being followed because she was scared no one would believe her. The officer assured her that she was believed now. Rex suddenly stood up and gave a sharp alert sound. The officers turned their attention toward the street where a person had paused and quickly changed direction. The movement was small, but Rex did not miss it. The officer noted the description and shared it quietly over the radio. Mia watched from inside the car, feeling both scared and relieved. She realized that her small signal had changed everything. The officer closed the door gently and told her to stay inside while he and Rex checked the area. Rex moved with purpose, now pulling the officer toward the edge of the square. His focus was intense and unwavering. The officer trusted Rex completely, knowing that his training and instincts rarely failed. As they disappeared from view, Mia pressed her hands together and whispered a silent hope that she had done the right thing. The noise of the city slowly returned, but the feeling in the air had changed. Something important was unfolding, and it all began with a small, brave signal from a little girl. The police vehicle felt quiet and safe to Mia, even though her heart still beat fast inside her chest. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and watched through the window as people moved in the square, pretending nothing serious was happening. Inside the car, the world felt slower and calmer, and for the first time that day, Mia felt she could breathe more easily. Outside, Rex moved with strong purpose beside the officer. His nose stayed close to the ground, and his eyes scanned every direction with sharp focus. He led the officer toward the street that Mia had pointed out earlier. The sounds of the city grew louder as they moved away from the square, but Rex did not hesitate for even a moment. The officer spoke softly to Rex, giving him space to work. He trusted the dog completely because Rex had proven again and again that he could sense things humans often missed. Rex paused near a corner and lifted his head suddenly. His ears stood tall, and his body stiffened as if a clear path had appeared in his mind. The officer noticed a figure standing near a bus stop pretending to look at a phone. The person shifted weight from one foot to the other and glanced around nervously. Rex took a step forward, and the officer felt the tension in the leash. He slowed his pace, wanting to observe without causing panic. Rex moved closer and stopped a few steps away from the figure. He did not bark or growl, but his stance spoke clearly. The officer stepped forward calmly and asked a simple question. The figure avoided eye contact and gave short answers that did not quite fit. Rex stayed focused and unmoving. Another police unit arrived quietly and positioned itself nearby. The officer explained the situation calmly and asked the person to wait while they checked something. The figure hesitated, then nodded slowly. Rex remained alert, watching every movement. Back in the police vehicle, Mia felt nervous again without knowing why. She hugged her bag tightly and looked toward the direction where Rex had gone. A gentle knock came on the window, and another officer smiled reassuringly, telling her she was doing great and that everything was under control. Minutes passed slowly but steadily. Mia watched people pass by, unaware of the quiet work happening nearby. She thought about her walk home and how she had felt watched and scared. She realized now that her fear had been real and that trusting her instincts had saved her. Rex returned with the officer and another officer walking behind them. The figure from the bus stop followed quietly. Rex stayed close to the officer but kept glancing toward the person, as if reminding everyone not to relax too soon. The officer opened the vehicle door and told Mia she was safe and that they had found someone they needed to speak with further. Mia nodded slowly, trying to understand everything. She asked if she was going to be taken home, and the officer smiled and said yes, very soon. He told her they would also talk to her grandmother so she would not worry. Rex sat beside the car again, but this time his posture softened. His job was nearly done, and he sensed that the danger had passed. Mia reached out through the open door and gently touched his head. Rex looked up at her and wagged his tail slowly. The officer thanked Mia for being brave and for remembering what she had learned. He explained that not everyone notices small signals, but Rex was trained to watch for them. He told her that her courage helped everyone understand what was happening before it became worse. As they waited for Mia's grandmother to arrive, the officer asked her simple questions about school and her favorite subjects. Mia spoke more easily now and even smiled once when talking about art class. The fear that had wrapped around her all day slowly loosened. When her grandmother arrived, she rushed forward with worry in her eyes. The officer explained everything carefully and praised Mia for her actions. Tears filled her grandmother's eyes as she hugged Mia tightly and thanked the officers again and again. Rex watched the reunion quietly, his tail moving gently. He seemed satisfied knowing the girl was safe and loved. The officer clipped the leash more loosely, now signaling the end of the tense work. The crowd in the square had mostly returned to normal, but a few people still watched with thoughtful expressions. Some whispered about the little girl and the dog and how something small had made such a big difference. As Mia walked toward home with her grandmother, she looked back once more at Rex. He sat tall beside the officer, just as he had at the beginning of the day, but now his eyes looked softer. Mia lifted her hand and gave a small wave. Rex responded with a slow wag as if saying goodbye. The city square returned to noise and movement, but for Mia the world felt changed. She had learned that fear did not always mean weakness and that asking for help could be quiet and brave at the same time. And she knew she would never forget the moment a police dog truly listened to her. The days after the event passed quietly, but the impact stayed strong in many hearts. Mia returned to school and walked a different route each day with her grandmother beside her. She felt safer now, not because the world had changed, but because she had learned she was not alone. Every step felt lighter and every sound felt less threatening. At school, Mia's teacher noticed the change in her posture and the calm in her eyes. When Mia quietly shared what had happened, the teacher listened closely and praised her for remembering the safety lessons. The class later reviewed the importance of noticing danger and asking for help in safe ways. Many students listened with new attention, realizing that small actions could matter a lot. Across the city, Rex returned to his usual work, but something about that day stayed with him too. The officers talked about it, often calling it a reminder of why training mattered so much. Rex had followed instinct and discipline together, and that balance had made all the difference. He received extra care and praise not as a reward but as recognition of trust well placed. The officer who first spoke to Mia thought about her often. He had seen many situations in his career, but that moment stood out. A small girl among a crowd had found a quiet way to be heard. It reminded him that protection was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it began with listening. The city held another public safety event weeks later. This time the crowd felt different. Parents stood closer to their children and paid more attention to the explanations. The officers spoke about awareness and courage and pointed out how important it was to trust feelings and signals. Rex sat proudly beside them, calm and steady. Mia and her grandmother attended the event together. Mia stayed close, but she was not afraid. When she saw Rex, her face brightened with recognition. Rex noticed her instantly and wagged his tail with gentle joy. The officer smiled and invited Mia to come closer. Mia walked forward confidently and stood beside Rex. The officer explained to the crowd how a simple signal and a trained dog had prevented harm. He did not share details but focused on the lesson. The crowd listened in silence, and respect replaced curiosity. Mia placed her hand on Rex's back and felt his warmth. She smiled, knowing that this dog had understood her when words felt too hard. Rex sat still, proud and calm, as cameras captured the moment. It was no longer just a show but a story of trust. After the event, the officer gave Mia a small badge with a picture of a dog on it. He told her it was not an award but a reminder of her bravery. Mia held it carefully, as if it were something very special. Life slowly returned to normal rhythms, but something inside Mia had changed forever. She spoke up more in class and walked with confidence. She understood that being small did not mean being powerless. She had a voice even when it was quiet. Rex continued his work, saving time and attention for moments that mattered. He remained alert to the smallest details because that was his purpose. The officers trusted him deeply and treated him not just as a tool but as a partner. The story spread quietly through the city, not as gossip but as a lesson. Parents taught their children signals and teachers repeated the message of awareness. People began to notice each other more carefully, and kindness felt closer to the surface. One evening as the sun set, Mia stood by her window holding the small badge. She thought about fear and courage and how close they could live together. She knew she might feel afraid again someday, but she also knew what to do. Somewhere across the city, Rex rested after a long day. His eyes closed slowly, but his instincts stayed sharp. He had done what he was trained to do, but more than that, he had listened. And because of that, a little girl walked safely forward into her life, stronger than before.